Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're connecting from. I am Sebastian Leverd. I am so happy that you guys are joining us today for Ask the Expert. We have a bunch of people in the room that are ready to answer all your questions regarding the session that we just aired a couple of minutes ago. Session is 3 new ways to enrich your productivity apps with Microsoft Graph tools and data, mainly focusing on the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, on delivering rich notifications, and using Event Hub as a way to do some webhooks with Microsoft Graph. I'm really, really happy to be here today. I hope your build experience is going quite well. So far, we have a couple of experts in the room. Let me introduce all of these experts. So we have Nick from the Microsoft Graph team, myself, Ben from our marketing organization. We have Deva, we have Danstan, we have Deanna, we have Shweta also in the chat right now. So feel free to use the Q&A capability of the Microsoft Teams live event. Ask your questions. We will be taking them as they flow in, and we'll be more than happy to answer any graph-related questions, especially on the 3 topics that we discussed a little bit earlier, but feel free to send them in. So I'm really excited because this really gives you an opportunity today, right, to ask the questions you had. You have seen Beth and Aicha do their session around Graph and Event Hub, and some stuff might pop up in your mind right now. So feel free to jump in, ask the questions, and get everything started. So let me go see if we already have a couple of first questions in there. Let me go grab one here. Yeah, so one of the questions that we've had that was asked is, what is the real value of building a Microsoft Graph Toolkit app? Or what's the value of integrating the Microsoft Graph Toolkit to your application? So maybe I can take that one to start, and afterwards we're going to do a round around the table here with all of our experts. I would say that the real value of building an MGT app is the simplicity, right? You drop in a couple of components in your application, dropping into the your HTML file, or if you're using other types of frameworks, it also works. And you just add them there, and everything becomes connected to the Microsoft Graph. And that's really the beauty of that technology, right? You don't really have to build any of these UI. You might be like me, kind of a lazy developer. I am a super lazy developer, right? I don't want to code all of these UI components. I'm horrible at CSS. But what we have done in our team is we made them available for you. So you don't have to recode them. You just have to loop these controls in. They're already connected to the Microsoft Graph. So I think I would say a really great way to start with playing with Microsoft Graph in a very simple way. So I would say that's the value here.
Yeah, and I would add to that actually, Sebastian. One of the things when you talk about making it easy is that the UI that's presented fits right into the Microsoft experience. So it is already designed to look and feel like a Microsoft built component, and it will integrate beautifully into your app, but it's also fully customizable. So you can make it look like whatever you want. So if you have a different design language that you're using in your app, a different way of presenting that you want to integrate your component with, you can absolutely do that as well. And it's really something that you see people do with everything from Windows apps to Teams apps, and it really doesn't matter so much what kind of app you want. It's super flexible, super easy. A couple lines of code, it's up and running, and even I can do it. And I'm not just a lazy developer, but I'm a fairly inexperienced one as well. So
Thanks for that, and I 100% agree. Just as a small follow-up to that, the best way to get access to the toolkit is extremely simple, aka.ms/mgt, And from there, you will have access to our repo, and you're going to have all the instructions on how to install all of these and links to our documentation and all of that. So if you want to start, aka.ms/mgt would be your best way to start.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple questions coming in now, so I wanted to just start reading some of those out to you all. So first of all, we've got Kai asking a question about, hey, is there a limitation on using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit for Microsoft Teams apps?
That's actually a great question. There is no limitation, and even I know the team right now is working on simplifying the single sign-on experience with Microsoft Teams. So it means that everything would automatically light up from a Microsoft Teams. So you would just include them right in there, and it would just magically work. Like that's like an amazing way of using NGT, is to embed that in any Microsoft Teams app. It's just like seamless. So there's no limitation really here.
So let me see if we want to let one of our other folks answer a question as well. Here's another question we got. Maybe I'll throw this one over to Nick. As a non-developer, where would you recommend getting started in terms of building knowledge and skills on Microsoft Graph? Actually, I could probably answer that question as a non-developer or as a marketing guy. And I think that the answer to this one is always go to graph.microsoft.com. It is the best place to start learning about the Microsoft Graph. It's where the quick starts are and the tutorials are. There's a really cool sort of a playground, a sandbox there called Microsoft Graph Explorer. And maybe while I'm talking about this, and Sab, you can pull that up, but
Absolutely.
This is the site, right? graph.microsoft.com. The Graph Explorer, if you want to show that on screen really quickly, is a really fun tool to play with. If you don't have an account, you can sign in and use sort of the default data and credentials that are associated with the tool. And you can see all of the cool stuff that it does. So over on the left-hand side of the screen, all the various different get commands that will retrieve data from the Microsoft Graph, and then all kinds of other features around here that show you samples of code, the permissions you need to do stuff. Lots of nice things in the Microsoft Graph Explorer, and also lots of nice stuff on the site. So if you have basic tools, right? If you have, Visual Studio, just a handful of things that you need, you can start running the quick starts very, very easily and get that stuff up and running. And that's, that's sort of how I taught myself the graph, was just starting here.
And that's how I started too. Like, even as an experienced dev, that's how your first Hello World experience is great, when you just have to go here in like literally 5 minutes. You have an app running on your machine, which is a really, really, really good experience right there. So definitely agree on this.
A couple other questions coming in that will change the topic a little bit. Anybody, here's someone whose name I'm not going to be able to pronounce because it's just 4 letters, but it says, can you give a GitHub repo, or is there a GitHub repo or some kind of a hands-on lab to get familiar with MSAL and graph integration, please? So the classic identity question here.
Yeah, that's a good one. Is there anyone in the room that would like to answer that? Oh, I think it was actually. That's great. I think there was a someone responding, and I want to add some discussion to this. Deva is right now answering the question in the chat, but I want to add a little bit to this from the portal. So the getting started is potentially the best way to get started, right? Here you're going to choose, you want to have .NET Core, .NET Framework, or even maybe just a JavaScript one. And from there, you're going to have a solution that will actually leverage MSAL. Now we're using MSAL for basically all of our authentication layers when we're talking to Microsoft Graph. But if you're more into maybe going a little bit deeper, I think one of the best ways to get there is to go to our github.com/Microsoft Graph. Or that's not what I wanted, which is the organization, right? So the Microsoft Graph here is, let me go here. And here you're going to be able to see all of the different repos that exist in the Microsoft Graph world, which includes samples, which includes our official docs, which includes a bunch of different things. And here you will be able to, for instance, potentially search for MSAL, and you're going to be an ASP.NET sample that is using MSAL, Azure AD with MSAL. You're going to have also stuff with Objective-C or Java or Xamarin. So you're going to have different languages that you might want to use with our MSAL library. So I would really recommend to go to github.com/Microsoft Graph. I'm going to add the link to the as an announcement in the Q&A. And I think this is where you should be starting for getting the best out of MSAL and Graph altogether.
Yep. Change topics entirely here, and there's a question here about is there any link between Graph and Dataverse? And I answered the question in the chat, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody had heard that question or seen that question. Right now, there isn't a link between Dataverse and Microsoft Graph, but you know, as I've said in the chat, it's something that we discuss, and we'll let people know when, you know, how that comes out over time. Nick, you said you wanted to take another question in the chat that just popped in around VS Code. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the question is around why Microsoft Graph instead of VS Code and or GitHub, right? And the answer is it's not one or the other. So Microsoft Graph is essentially a way for you to be able to retrieve information from Microsoft 365. VS Code will be the code editor in which you can code your application, and then GitHub is really the code repository, so the source code, being able to do your application lifecycle management using GitHub. So those are really mutually exclusive, so not the same thing.
Okay, here's a question from a slightly different perspective. Where do you recommend that we put, this is David, where do you recommend that we publish our production code rather than localhost when we're developing? So it's probably a matter of opinion, I suppose, but what do you guys want to handle that?
Nick, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Again, right, as Ben said, it really depends on where you actually are about to deploy your solution. Personally, what I'll do is I normally use an Azure app service that will be using dev deployment slot, right? And then I'll test it out from there. If you don't want to use localhost, I mean, Seb, you've probably are using a different way, right? It really depends on the developer.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of Graph, right? It's an API that is you can call from basically any technology. So you want to deploy it on a phone, like as binary on a mobile app on a phone, you can do it. You want to do it in Azure, you can do it. You want to use all the news that we announced at Build this year with like Azure Application Services using Kubernetes and all these really cool technologies, you can do it. You want to use just a regular website, you can do it. You want to use just an HTML file, you can do it. So literally here, everything is available to you on the ways to deliver the app through any hosting platform, basically. There's a very interesting question, and I think I'm going to ask Ben this one, if you don't mind, Ben. And here, I would love to use your name. So Anonymous, yes, in this case, is asking, why is this called Graph? Why do we call the Microsoft Graph the Microsoft Graph? And I know that there's a good reason around it, but Ben, why do we call it Graph?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. You may know more about it than I actually do, believe it or not, but because I know it's not a true graph database. Like there is this idea that it's a graph database, and people always come to me and say, why isn't it? I think it's meant more to describe all the relationships that it does actually map, and it is a name that came before, if you can believe it, despite my gray hair, it is a name that appeared before I was actually part of the Graph marketing organization. So I didn't have anything to do with its naming, but it really was, you know, because it was the best way to describe the sort of the web of relationships that it made possible. And so there you see probably what is one of the original drawings of how we used to represent the Microsoft Graph, and that, you know, that set of relationships between people and objects and files and folders and conversations and emails centered really around people. The sort of the graph of activity around people was how we originally came up with the name. And it was, I admit, a bit of a marketing concept, because it is, in fact, not a pure graph database.
Absolutely.
Anything you'd add to that, Seb?
I would. I think you did great here. I will not question any of the statement you just did, and I think you're right by saying at the end, it's not a real graph database. Yes, it's not something that right now we do not support. For example, all the GraphQL's queries that you can make to a graph database or whatsoever. But definitely, I think we have to see it as a graph of data that represents all your data estate that exists in Microsoft 365 and even beyond, using security and Windows and all these kind of things. So basically, it's the REST API to Microsoft 365 that was represented as a graph of data.
Yeah, so hey, one of the things that this session was about that nobody's asked any questions yet around, so I'll just throw it out there and get the conversation started on it, is rich notifications, right? So we've done a lot of work both on rich notifications and on also building an event hub. So we can cover both of those things, but yep. Why don't we just talk for a second about what we're supporting right now with rich notifications? What resources are out there?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Rich notifications are a blessing, right? You want to get the notifications from Graph when they happen. You want to have the data. So a good example of this right now is Teams and Messages support rich notifications. So if you subscribe to any new chat messages or any new channel messages, you can get notified that there's a new message that just came in. In there, you're going to get the rich notification. That rich notification is including the data of that specific message. For a long time, we've been supporting change notifications in Microsoft Graph, but basically we were sending you a pointer that you were supposed to use to call back to Graph, grab the information from there. Now, instead of this, we're sending you an encrypted version of that resource ready for you to consume. So it's a lot easier, and it saves a lot of round trips between your applications in Microsoft Graph because you already have access to it. So Teams is one of them. Exchange. So now we're supporting notifications in different areas of Exchange, like events, messages, all of these. So you can really get notifications from there in our beta endpoint right now. So you just need to subscribe to those. Specify that you want to have resource data as part of it, and there you go. You're good to go. So this is a great way for you to really build planet scale applications. When you're receiving a lot of data, that's the best way to build your applications because you will be already have that data. So that's great.
Yeah, and now I kind of have a follow-up question on this, Seb, right? So the other thing we covered is the event hub, right? So as part of the event hub, you're able to receive notifications, right, that contain rich data, right? So in your opinion, what would be the advantage of using event hub for that over Web API or Azure Function?
I think it's a simplicity. Event Hub is a data tool, and especially organizations that are playing around data, they're really used to using Event Hub as a way to receive millions and millions of notifications or messages or events as part of this. So I think it's the simplicity of setting it up. It's also the simplicity of you don't have to build that much of an API behind this. You can actually build a low-code type of experience. What Aicha showed in our session and some of the demos we're doing as part of our team is we're actually using logic apps as a way to receive this notification. So you have a nice Canva experience. You can drag and drop controls. You can do loops. You can do ifs. You can do anything there. And you don't have to really code much to make it happen. So from a simplicity, from getting the notifications to delivering value, I would say that the cycle is a little shorter using Event Hub.
I was just going to throw out there was a question that just came in around using Power Apps and Microsoft Graph Tools, and I know that Shweta was answering it, so I figured that it might be good for her to just answer it for everybody because Umar asked the question. And so, Shweta, if you want to hop on the call for a minute, let us know.
Yeah, sure. So I've pointed to a a tutorial where they can go ahead and see how we can quickly build custom business apps leveraging the Microsoft Graph inside the Power App Studio. So I think that tutorial is good to go with, and it will help in getting that insights and knowledge.
Great. Thanks. And I'm going to look at that link too, as a matter of fact, because that's a question that I actually to bone up a little bit on myself. So, excellent.
I see we have a question regarding queries on users, right? So Andrea is asking a question. How can you, like, which users have some skills as part of Graph? So it is absolutely possible to use some of these properties. I'm going to link to a blog post. I'm going to add it just afterwards on how to actually do it. But now our users endpoint supports like advanced filtering. So you will be able to actually do this kind of search automatically to build an experience. So that's really, really good to use, because it really becomes something there. Also, something to start thinking about is also the direction that we're taking with Microsoft Search. Microsoft Search, which is part of the Microsoft Graph as an API. So you can actually use the search endpoint on the Microsoft Graph, and you will be able at some point in time. Right now we support lots of entities. We do not support the people or the users entities, but from a vision standpoint, definitely at some point in time, we're going to support that. So I would definitely look at how what's the experience like for Microsoft Search, and from there, you're going to be able to at some point in time also use that API to search for skills, for departments, for companies, for any properties of the actual user. Hope this answers the question right there. Let's see. Do we have? Okay, I missed the Q&A now. Do we have any other question right now? Feel free.
It would be good to know. It would be great to, Andrew, if you could let us know actually in the chat if we answered your question properly, because the other, if that's helpful,
Absolutely.
that would be good for us to know. Yeah, I don't see any other questions right now, but let's see, what else did we want to talk about here?
Well, I mean, in previous sessions, we did get a couple of questions regarding the Microsoft Graph Toolkit, right? And people were asking about what are like framework are we able to use it, like Angular, React, right? I don't know, Seb, if you quickly want to talk about this, like what are the different frameworks we can use the Microsoft Graph Toolkit with?
Yeah, and this is something we're getting asked a lot, right? Because initially, the Microsoft Graph Toolkit is what we would call framework agnostic. It does not fit into any framework. It's a set of web components, so it's a drag and drop in HTML, and that is it. The beauty is that by using these web components, now you can leverage these components or these controls as part of any apps. You're building with ASP.NET and Blazor, you can use the Graph Toolkit because they're just there available for you. Same thing with Angular, Vue.js, anything. But if you're more of a React person, we also build kind of a wrapper around our web components to give you the richness of React as part of your apps with using our web components. So we have a wrapper library that exists right there. So basically, to your question, Nick, is use whatever you want to use as long as it's like web, or even if you want to look at building kind of Windows applications using Electron, for instance. Well, again, you can use web and make that happen through an Electron app that is Windows-based or Mac-based or Linux-based. So I think you have the choice to do pretty much anything.
One of the other things that was interesting, actually, that we could touch on with Graph Toolkit is that there, because there have been some questions about auth and stuff like that, is that we have a number of providers too in the Microsoft Graph Toolkit that are designed to make authentication a little bit easier, and we've talked mainly about components. So do you want to talk just for a second about that as well? Because I think that might actually be a good answer for some of the simple stuff here too.
Yeah, sure. And that's absolutely right, because there's two parts to NGT, right? There's the components part that comes magically, but then also there's the providers where it enables you to use authenticated graph clients and making sure that all the login experience is as seamless as possible in any experience you have. So if you want to do an MSAL, if you want to do an Electron one, if you want to do a Teams one, if you want to do a SharePoint framework integration, all of these providers are already there. So you don't have to build the authentication layer and all of these steps and hops to get the user token. It's all done for you. So these are already in there. And the beauty is, in the end, the result of a provider is an authenticated Graph client. So if you want to just use a client to do other things on Graph, do calls to other areas of Graph, you're just free to do so and use these providers for that. So that's kind of these two areas, components and providers, are where the value, a lot of the value of MGT is.
Yep, and I see Luis just asked Luis Dell just asked a quick question. Sorry, it's the middle of the night for me here about retrieving the AAD profile picture from the graph, and I think a bunch of folks have jumped in on that one. But Danson, do you want to just throw the answer out onto the chat or into the audio stream here, since you were one of the folks replying? Destin?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
So
Thanks.
yeah, Graph provisions endpoints for getting the full user profile, including a dedicated endpoint for getting the user's profile. So I see Deva has added the endpoint for getting the user's profile picture, which Graph provision. So that profile picture is the one that appears on AAD and is used across Microsoft Graph as the user's profile picture. Yeah.
And you can do it in the Graph Explorer. Yeah, there you go.
That's exactly what I wanted to
Yes.
show. And here, and that's the value of Graph, right? It's a single API to get all the data you need. And here you can see my beautiful face, or actually in that case, it's Megan's face, photo right there. So all possible, even through the Microsoft Graph Explorer. That's great.
Right, and you can see right over there on the left-hand side, it says "Get My Photo." So that's exactly. So there's your call, and then you can look at permissions, and everything is right there. So one click to answer your question if you're playing around with Graph Explorer.
There you go.
All right, we've got a couple of new questions popping in here. 5 new questions actually coming in. Okay, let's see.
So Ben, I can actually take the question regarding the pipeline for from Graph to Azure AI, right? So essentially, I asked Patrick for a clarification, but what we're talking about here is a way to actually extract data from the Graph and feed it to some AI components on the Azure side. And what we have is a solution called Microsoft Graph Data Connect, which essentially allows you to leverage Azure Data Factory and copy data in bulk from Microsoft 365. Currently, we have data sets revolving around Outlook, so you're able to extract information about emails, about events, and that will actually allow you to then feed it into like machine learning model or to be able to do insights on that data. So definitely encourage you folks to take a look at Microsoft Graph Data Connect. Thanks, Eb, for bringing up that link there, but have a look at that for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for the answer, Nick.
There's another question here about, can we query for devices in Azure AD? This might be the last question that we have time to answer here.
Yes, we do. There's an endpoint for apps and devices. So let me bring that up here. If you're using the Graph documentation, which is at graph.microsoft.com, right? On view 1.0, you're going to see devices and apps, and you're going to be able to see all the different mobile apps. So basically, all the Intune API are available on Microsoft Graph. So definitely, you're going to be able to query any of the devices that exist in your environment. Absolutely. Let's see if there's a couple of. I know we can go a little bit over, right? So we can maybe take a couple more. There's a couple of questions that were answered here. Can we query SharePoint? Definitely. List items, files, documents, OneDrive content, sites, lists. All of that is available through this. Thanks, Denson, for responding to that question. We have a one regarding CSS and customization. I think you said earlier, Ben, that we can customize, right, MGT a lot and bring our own styling and everything. So it is absolutely possible to style any of the components and add your own classes, your own styling, your own ways of customizing the controls. So it is definitely possible to do so, and we encourage you to do it, right? We want you to customize it to really make it fit natural inside your application. We provide the tools, just customize it to fit it into your app. I think we're kind of clearing out the questions here. We're at time, so I think we're gonna end it here. Feel free to continue watching Build, right? There's still a lot of sessions. There are other graph sessions that are coming up. We have a good bunch of Microsoft 365 build sessions, so please feel free to do that. We're going to be live in a couple of hours for this other session around Microsoft Graph Connector and Adaptive Card. So that's going to happen in a couple of hours. So feel free to jump in and ask other graph-related questions right there. And thank you, Ben. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Denson. Thank you, Shweta. Thank you, Deva. Thank you, Deanna, for all the help on helping us drive all the questions. We had a bunch of questions. Some were answered with only through chat. Some were answered in speaking mode with me and Ben and Nick and all the other folks. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us today. And hopefully you have a great end to your day. Enjoy the rest of Build and talk to you soon. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.